Hi, and welcome to the Mountain Valley News Butch and Terry Show. I'm your host, Logan Wright, and with me as always is Coach Butch Cassidy and Coach Terry Mitchell. And today we're going to be discussing the Alabama State basketball tournament and just how it's progressed and changed throughout the year.
Before we get started, we've had some labor problems with our program. Logan, alias Radar, he's been putting his work and school above our program, so we're going to have to meet with his union. And also, we understood we didn't have any ads or anything for the program, so I've got an ad here. It says, call Terry Mitchell, 638-5068, if you've got any old cars in your barn. I'll also take old backboards and old basketball goals. So 256-638-5068. Call Terry. And it's not BR549. I knew Butch would do that.
I just go ahead and like to apologize for putting my college education in front of this show, Coach.
Well, long as you're aware of it.
I'm deeply sorry about that. Yeah. So anyway, back to the basketball program we were originally supposed to be talking about before shameless ads were put in. But so y'all just go ahead and start talking to us a little bit about the state tournament and what it's like to coach in one. We'll start with that.
Well,
go ahead.
When you get as far as state tournament, the kids are special. They're special to get there. And you develop such a bond with these kids and with their parents. And they develop a bond with each other. And guys, they've worked so hard to get to the point that they're at that it's something that'll last a lifetime. I know the first time we won it, the kids celebrating in the locker room when we came in, and they didn't believe me. But I told them, I said, 30 years from now, this will be more important to you than it is today. And it is, because they still call me, talk about it. And we still get together, every couple of years and have a little reunion. And I've told them the longer time passes, the better we got. And the better we're getting, because we're a whole lot better ball team right now than we were back when we
We're undefeated. That's about as good as you can get.
But it's that bond. People don't know how hard these kids work. And, 3-year span, we went 87-5, which shows we had some talent. And I'd like to think coaching played a little part, but I doubt it. But those kids came to work every day, and they practiced as hard as they could. And it proved to be successful for them. We went to state tournament 3 straight years and won it twice. And it wasn't anything I did, it was what they did every day. Because our goal was to get better every day at practice at something. Maybe a step quicker, maybe, shoot the ball a little bit better, whatever. It was to get better. And they lived up to that. And so people go watch state tournament, they think, well, this is fun and these kids are good, but they don't know what they've gone through to get there. It's an experience, and it gets better as time goes on. I'm becoming a lot better coach now than I was then.
Yeah, one of the things I've watched is as far as coaching is concerned, sometimes the players are a little more stressed than usual. But as far as coaching is concerned in state tournaments, that's the easiest coaching you ever do.
Yeah.
Because your kids are already a success, and I'm sure we'll talk about Plainview in a little. I want to talk about the teams that are there, but Coach Cash and I have met twice, which y'all can imagine turned into 4 hours of non-preparing for this. We just got to telling stories, but of course I grew up at Pisgah, and then Coach Cassidy coached at Pisgah. So that we have a lot of background in that, and we're going to show you a photo that of Coach Cooley winning state tournament at Pisgah in 1959. And first time I saw the photo, I mean, I was out of school in college or something, and I asked Coach Cooley, I said, who's giving you the trophy there? And it was 1959. It was Coach Bryant. And he talked about how active Coach Bryant was in the state. And so that was when the changes in the basketball has gone from the real, if you watch Hoosiers, which is, the greatest basketball movie, sports movie ever made, that was really Alabama basketball also. Football didn't have any kind of playoff system. I don't think they even started voting on state championship football until the early 60s. And but the Pisgah thing was just like that. In 1959, Pisgah actually lost in the finals of the district tournament. It used to have a 16-team district tournament. There were only two classifications, single A and double A. Pisgah, because they drew from so many schools, were a 2A school, but one of the smallest ones. And Pisgah lost to Scottsboro in the finals. Scottsboro, Pat Trammell and that group wound up getting beat. Did they get beat at Tuscaloosa?
Yeah, I think they did.
And then Pisgah went on and played. Coach Cooley talked about they were playing Opp, I think, and Opp was favored to beat them real big. And at halftime, Coach Cooley and them had them 31-3. And he said, my boys didn't get the Birmingham news and didn't know they were supposed to lose. So, and there's some great stories down there. But if you guys will watch, one of the things I remember about the 60s is if you went to the state tournament, schools and parents didn't have the money to send you down there and let you stay in motels and hotels. It wasn't a big, you stayed in old Army barracks. And if you, of course, if you go in, before you get on McFarland Boulevard, in Tuscaloosa, the shopping center there on the right was where those Army barracks were. And so you go in there, and if I remember correctly, you only stayed, I was a professional B-teamer, so I never did get to go to the state tournament. But there was two in the room, and it was just real small dorm type rooms, and it was you were together if you wanted to be or not. And but all the teams were there, and there was a lot of interaction, and everybody had a good time. But if you ever want to see those barracks, you can see them on the movie Smokey and the Bandit, because there was this huge
Where they blew them up.
chimney,
Yeah.
and that's when in Smokey and the Bandit they came in there and blew that stuff up. And when he's racing around Jackie Gleason, so there's no getting away from me getting off the subject. There's no way from it.
I was enjoying the movie recollection.
Talking about Coach Cooley, of course, Coach Mitchell played for him and everything, which was great. I would have loved to have done that. But I got to know Coach Cooley when I went to Pisgah, and we became friends. The first time we went to the state, I went to Coach Cooley. I wanted some magical advice, And his advice was, if they eat pinto beans and cornbread for supper before a game, feed them pinto beans and cornbread at state. He said, don't buy them a big steak. Don't tell them how important it is, because they'll know. And that was his advice to me, which was pretty sound advice.
Keep doing what you've been doing.
Yeah.
That's what I brung you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you prepare for this game, do you think it's any different on the players, the environment? Do you think it's going to affect them no matter what, no matter how?
I do. Yes. And we were talking about a while ago that Plainview finished the game the other night, last 4 minutes, with 2 freshmen and 3 sophomores on the floor. And I tell Beck, my wife, that that scares me to death. I'm afraid one of them will break into it being a freshman, but they don't play like that, and that's right. Now,
I don't think they know the difference.
I don't.
think they just
They
think-
may not be to where they know enough to be afraid, and that's good. But I can remember one year playing Phil Campbell, who we were much better than, and the teams that we beat in the state tournament generally were better than we were, and. But we were better than Phil Campbell. We just beat them 1 point. And I walked in the dressing room just frustrated. I said, what is wrong with y'all? And I won't tell Steve's name, but he said, those lights are so bright out there. And and it really was. We never had played in a place that had lights that bright, because gyms around here were, they had 200-watt light bulbs in them. And, so it's going to be a switch. I'm just, I think the kids at Plainview, if they can win 2 more and get down there, I've just got confidence it's not going to bother them much because they're more worried about Coach Coker
Oh, Lord,
than
yes.
they are about anything that's going on the floor.
The wrath of Coker knows no bounds. I will tell you, I've lived through that.
Well, the parents are gonna tell them how important it is. I mean,
Yes,
they're gonna,
yes.
if the parents will stay out of it and the fans quit congratulating them, they'll go down there and play. Yeah.
So, do y'all think it's more nerve-wracking to be a player and go down there and play in this environment, or to be a coach and have to prepare for this and go down there and coach in this environment?
I personally, I think it's player. Coaching, Butch can tell you more about it. As far as the coaching part, with me, I just felt like it was already a successful situation, and you knew you were playing at your best to be there. That's generally the best you're going to play all year, and but now I think players take it at a different level. And one of the best things I saw that we did down there between the first game one year and the second game, we had a day off, and we didn't pick a basketball up.
Yeah.
And but I woke the kids up on that day off, really early. I mean, because I knew that after the game they hadn't slept much, and I woke them up so early. They were so tired that night. I kept them busy all day. They just all went there and passed out and slept about 10 hours because they were exhausted. And then that night we had a lot better energy than the other teams. So there's a lot of things that go into it like that. And I talked to a coach the other day about that same thing, and he said now, and this comes with the advent of girls basketball and the season being shorter, is he said you do not fall into any kind of rhythm in high school basketball anymore. He said things are upset. A weather game, games you miss because of football playoffs, games of rescheduling the girls here and you there. And he said, you just do it. And he said the kids kind of have adjusted through the irregularity of the sport. When I was at Butler, y'all know how OCD I am about basketball. And my great friend, Coach Doss, who, bless his heart, wanted me to go scout a game the other night, and I told him I was not going to go scout a game because he's got the best player in the nation, 11th grader. And I looked at halftime other night, and he was ahead 35 points. And I thought if he'd made me go scout that game, I would now.
But you could have taken credit for that.
Yeah, I could have. But 22 dunks, you can't take credit for. But y'all got me tickled. All I could see was that. But there's just no at Butler. We were about an hour away from playing, and I was scared. And Coach Doss is shaking hands with everybody in the stands, and I'm sitting there thinking. And I said, Coach, where are the boys? And he said, I guess they're still at the hotel. So I thought, gee whiz, But here they come stumbling in, eating Cracker Jacks and everything. Never broke a sweat, So it's a different mindset than what I had and what Coach Cassidy's coached in. So there's been a huge change. And
My biggest concern was I'd do something stupid and lose the state tournament,
Yeah.
I counted on my kids to do what they're supposed to do, but sometimes coach gets to coaching, and one game, in the semifinals, the second year we down there, we had a 12-point lead with 3 minutes to go, and I had best ball handler in the state, so we went four corner. We ended up winning by 3. And the director of the tournament walked off the floor with me. He said, Coach, you really did a good job. You almost coached yourself out of it. And I learned a lot from that.
I was watching Coker when they played Geraldine the other night, and I could tell he was getting so angry because a ref did make a bad call, and he was getting so angry and so frustrated, and he wanted to go out there, but I believe Plainview was up by like 4 at that time, so he couldn't go out there. So I'd watch him. He'd throw his jacket, and he'd walk over to the side, and he'd get him a cup of water and take a sip, and he'd set it down. He'd grab it, take another sip, and set it down. I was like, oh man, if you could just hear his thoughts right now, that's what I would
don't
love.
want to hear.
You probably couldn't.
You know,
compete.
thing about it as a coach, you know, in a situation like that, you don't mind paying the $300. It's the assassination attempt on your life for blowing a game like that would
Yes.
worry you. We're talking about, Coach and I got to talking about and spent a whole day of just the memories that we had of the state tournament, and making, Coach reminded me that of making just a terrible mistake, and you've seen that. We've seen that 2 or 3 times. It literally cost. I can remember being at the state tournament. One of my friends from college had gotten beat in the finals the year before, and he was playing the same team in the finals again. The team he was playing, it was going to be a really good game. It was going to be a close game. 3 of the boys were not where they were supposed to be at bed check or something. And they were in the finals of the state, and he wouldn't let them play. He let one of the managers play. The manager had 8 points. Well, my friend won the state tournament, but I was sitting with Coach Cooley up there, and I asked Coach Cooley, I said, would you have done that? And because I wanted to know, and he said, short of them boys robbing a gas station and being in jail, he said they would have played. And this was his reasoning, and I'm telling this to kids. Now you're representing somebody that's a lot bigger than you, because the people of Rainsville other night and the people of Geraldine, God, what a wonderful atmosphere it was at the Civic Center. And you're playing for somebody beside. Wonderfully speaking, we have great kids at Plainview this year. Those are just 9 great kids that's grown up in upward basketball, going to camps, playing AAU ball, shooting the ball all the time. They never practice, they play. And that's a huge difference. It's wonderful to watch them. But all these other teams that I'm talking to too, of course, you know, I'm real blue in the situation, but there are a lot of teams that are getting to go from our area around here, and you just want those kids to know. I've watched coaches, and I've got, I tell my wife, I've got a counseling service I run with 4 coaches that call me every week that we talk, and 2 of them have suffered through situations that seem to be culturally changing. We have kids who, because of their family situations mostly, but also what they see on television and what they see these players, professional players doing. I mean, I don't. Peyton Manning can come with his lawyer to my house and ring a doorbell. I'm bad mad at him. I mean, you turn around and win a championship like he did on the last game he played, and say, I'm going to go home and drink a lot of beer. Well, thanks, Peyton. For me to be a Tennessee fan is bad, but I grew up loving his dad, watching him. We're about the same age, and then watching his 2 sons being raised in a certain way, and him say that for kids, that opens the door for a kid. Every 12-year-old quarterback in the nation now thinks that's okay. And coaches are really suffering from that. And I watched a coach a school system disciplined a couple of kids. And I came in to the gym, and the grandfathers of the kids knew me and walked up and told me what happened. And I'm thinking, they're taking up for these kids doing something that was totally inappropriate. And I'm just, that has to stop. One of the things that's I see that's really successful in the good teams around here, and the 2 I've watched is Geraldine, and because of Cale and being from Plainview, Robbie, the 2 teams I've watched the most are the 2 teams that's just got great kids.
Yeah.
And that's what this is all about. And
if you will look at all the teams at the state, most of them are going to fit that description.
seldom do you see a child misbehave at state. Seldom.
I was fortunate at Pisgah. Every one of my kids had good parents, and they supported them. and they supported me. And boy, it makes a difference. Now, when you take them off somewhere, you don't have to worry about how they're going to act, and if they're going to embarrass you or the school or whatever. And most teams that's not like that, they self-explode somewhere,
Yeah.
but on the way down there, so they don't ever get there. You don't see them.
There's a great psychologist that answered most of the problems of coaches years ago. His name was Jerry Clowers. And Jerry Clowers said, if you'll follow an ugly kid home, an ugly mama open the door and let it in. And if you find a kid that misbehaves, if you'll follow him home, they've been allowed to. And what we see is parents that have allowed that will overreact then. They have to have somebody to blame besides their child, and they usually blame the coach. And then if the coach doesn't have an administrator that'll stand behind them, then the coach is in trouble. And that's a sad part of what our society has gone to. But there's some bad things that's happened. I remember Coach and I were talking about the Phillips kid that made all SEC at Alabama. This has been 35 years ago that there were 16,000, whatever Memorial Auditorium at the university holds was full, Parker and Carver. And that summer, I got to coach the all-star team with those two guys and another guy, great people. And I learned a different side of basketball. But they loved it so much. It was just filled with Birmingham people. And at the end of the game, the Phillips kid, who goes on to have a great college career, they are behind 1 point. He got fouled on the buzzer. And he made 2 free throws and win the state championship. He's about 6'8", or he can miss them, lose, or make one and tie it. He missed both of them. And I don't mean he missed them a little. I mean, he hand grenade missed them. And his coach was Cap Brown, who up until Coach Doss got more wins than he did, was winning as coach in the state. And Cap was about 5'6". And he ran out there and just hugged this 6'8" player. And everybody was saying, how precious is that coach to go and hug that kid? And I said, I don't believe I would say that. I said, because you don't know what he's actually saying to that kid. And it was probably, you're going to walk to Birmingham. But you see things like that. But my favorite all time, I'm sorry for this, a coach, I'll go ahead and tell the school. I think, well, no, I won't tell the school because they may come back and beat me up or something. State tournaments, semifinals. The coach was coaching, long-time coach, great coach, probably 20 years older than Coach Cassidy and I. And
He's probably dead.
that's what
I didn't want to say it. I was like,
that's where you should really come
I was
in.
like, I don't want to say he's dead, but if we were betting, that's where I would put my money.
Have an opening line. But his son was, I would say he's probably 11 or 12. Was, you got a chart down there and keeping it and, put the water out there. He did a good job. And they were ahead, but it was close. And it got down there in the last 2 or 3 minutes, and the official made when the referee blows his whistle, he's half wrong.
Oh, always.
And this little kid just threw his clamp board down. But it was as if, for some reason, I was looking over there, and it was like that created some kind of vacuum under that clamp board, and it just slid out on the floor, papers just flying everywhere. Well, the referee turned and called a technical on the coach's little boy. And they lost. They got beat in the semifinals, and I'm thinking, my goodness, that boy will be adopted. What was so funny, about 10 years later, when that kid got out of school, his dad coached at the biggest high school in the county, and the kid the young boy took the smallest school in the county job. And his dad beat him like 120-something to 50-something. And they were talking about this, and that his mother was mad at her husband for beating him. And he said, well, he needs to get to work if he don't want to get beat. And I thought, when I heard that, I thought, no. He remembered getting that kid losing that semifinal game. He just whipped him for that.
Do y'all have any more stories about the state
Oh,
tournament? Y'all
no,
wanna
we don't have, this could go on for hours.
I've got to tell about Miranda.
Okay. This is not my Miranda.
No, this is not
Different.
Coach Mitchell's. This is the second year we won state. I had 7 players on the varsity, so I took 3 junior varsity players with me, so we'd have 10. And we were up 18, 20 points about 3 minutes to go in the ball game, and I was wanting to let everybody get to play, so they could say they played in state tournament. I put Miranda in. She's the sweetest kid in the world. First time down the floor, referee blows the whistle, and foul on Tinker. Well, that's okay. Next time down the floor, blows the whistle, foul on Tinker. So I'm starting to heat up a little bit by now, you know. The next time down the floor, same thing, foul on Tinker. I call her over there and I say, now Miranda, we're going to win this game. We're going to win state championship if you quit fouling. She said, but Coach, I love to hear him call my name. How do you get mad?
That'd been the only way I ever got my call. The state tournament, if you ever go to, they play the girls' games there now, and I think they do some of the gymnastics stuff in Old Foster Auditorium in Tuscaloosa. If you ever go down there, they've remodeled it, and but you can still see the essence of the building, and that was just they had bleachers on each end. And you would go, so if you got, somehow I would get a ride to the state tournament. I remember my sister carrying us a couple of times, all me and my thug friends, but we would go down and sat on the end where the football players sat. You know, you're 8th grader and you're just intimidated as anybody could be. Those great big old guys would come in. And
You had your thug friends to back you up, though. So.
Oh yeah, they were about as tall as I am, about 5'3". But I remember sitting there as well as I can. This will be another one. He's old now, but he can still beat me up. But and this is let's just call him Bobby. Bobby was a defensive back at the University of Alabama, and Bobby was also an All-SEC football and baseball player. He was really good. And he later became a college coach. And as a matter of fact, Jeremy Pruitt in his early years worked for him, and Jeremy was telling me about one day they got to a big game, and Jeremy's safety, I don't know if Jeremy was just defensive back coach or defensive coordinator, his safety had left his shoes. And Bobby, the head coach that I'm sitting by as an 8th grader, behind in Foster Auditorium State Tournament, tells Coach Pruitt, says, he's not playing. If you're not smart enough to bring your shoes, this is big time college football. Well, Jeremy went and found him some shoes anyway and put him out there. But I said, he wasn't quite that disciplined in college. Kids do not forget anything an older player, and particularly a college player, tells them. I was sitting by this guy, me and Jack Turner, and these kids would come by selling Cokes, and those guys would just reach out and get the whole tray. Say, go back, and they'd let them out. And Bobby would take this Coke after he drank it and make an ice ball out of it that was so hard. And then he'd look at somebody, and it wouldn't be close. It'd be down there, about 70 feet away. And he'd throw at it and hit somebody in the top of the head, sitting upstairs. And then he turned around one time and slapped me on the knee and said, "What'd you think about that?" It scared me so bad, I like that heart. I said, "No, that coach was not that disciplined as a player, but they had a ball up there, and we couldn't wait to go down there and see it with, with people, that would come in, Snake Stabler, and that was such a thrill. I think it's lost a little bit of that, the state tournament. Going to Birmingham, that's real
I think that
urban.
really hurt the state tournament when they left Tuscaloosa, because it's just a gathering place. Everybody loved to go down there. It was great seats all the way around, and even when they started taking it to Auburn every other year, or half of it Auburn, I think a lot of it was lost there. Of course, I understand why Auburn
I do
forced them
too.
to do that.
I do too.
But I don't know, the atmosphere, you go watch 3 or 4 ball games, go back, hotel, get you a bite to eat, come back and watch some more, and just make a week of it.
By the end of the week, somebody have to remind you who won.
Yeah.
And who you saw, because you'd see so many games. And I remember when I came to Plainview, we had one basketball, by the way, and but I could count on Fletcher Dearman being at my basketball games. He was not going to miss one. He loved the state tournament more than you couldn't go with him, because sometimes you just want to take a game off and go eat and take your time. Mr. Dearman was not going to take a game off. He was going to watch every one, and he would go on Monday, and he wasn't coming back until he'd seen every game down there. And that was, and you'd go to the cafeterias, and you'd run into. I had a friend, still have him as a friend. As a matter of fact, it was the guy that threw me out of the game that Butch talked about our last show. But he and I were in line, and he knew every college coach in America. And that was just more fun for me. But Charles Nutt Harris is his name. Yeah. Nut somebody would come by and he would say, "Hey, Coach, hey Charles," I'm thinking, how's this guy know everybody? But that was such a treat for a young coach to get to talk to people like that. And I think we've lost some of that. Now you go to the Civic Center there, the coaching. You don't go down the coaching thing because coaches are pigs. They want to go down there and eat something. Well, these big buildings and have backs that won't let you give away food because they want you to go up there and buy popcorn, no matter how stale it is. And, they pulled a couple of T-shirt tricks to where the first thing you want is to buy a T-shirt. Well, the state messed up and let someone have the contract who paid them a huge amount of money for the contract, and you go up there and order a T-shirt and they're going to mail it to you. Well, you don't want a state champion tournament T-shirt 3 weeks later. Right. So that was a bust, but I think they're back down to that. So they've learned difficulty in the age of, it takes a tremendous amount of money to run a state tournament, so they have to do a lot of advertising and stuff. I remember Coach Scott, Bubba Scott, when I first got into coaching, someone at a meeting one time asked him, will he ever move the state tournament from Tuscaloosa? And he said, no, not as long as I'm associated with it. He said, because the state tournament, when we didn't have money to run it, the University of Alabama would take it. They'd get us housing. They'd let the kids come down there. They would sponsor the All-Star game. And that was, I think that was a direct result of Coach Bryant coming in when he came in and involved all the schools. I think it's missed something going into the urban area. It's difficult to park. And now the State Athletic Association, I did talk to them, a couple of months ago. They generally don't talk to me. So
they used to talk to me a good bit.
Yeah, well,
they found out you were hanging out with him, and they just cut that out.
Say, what's Mitchell done lately?
How much is this going to cost?
I used to talk about Fletcher Dearman, though. If I didn't go to the state tournament for some reason, a year, he'd call me and say, "Can I borrow your coaching card?"
Yes.
Well, he'd always, he had the clothing store. He'd always give me a shirt.
No, you got a lot more money than it would cost you to get in.
He could have paid to get in, but is that going in with a coaching card?
Yes, he loved it. He loved it. Oh Lord, I remember one time you just couldn't help but love him. I remember one time that you were hosting the Sand Mountain tournament at Pisgah. It's in the 70s, and Mr. Dearman. I was going up there. Y'all had a great hospitality room on the stage, and I told Mr. Dearman, I said, "Come on up here and get something to eat with me." Listen, you would have thought I had bought him a brand new Cadillac. The rest of the night, if somebody passed by and he'd say, "Me and Coach Mitchell went up there and ate supper tonight." He just loved basketball, and he loved his best friend in the world was Coach Red Strickland.
Oh yeah,
Coach Strickland was a basketball coach at Geraldine. And then when they built the new section high school, I remember Mr. Roy Buford. And I know I'm a king of trivia. But Mr. Roy Buford's 1959 Ford is for sale if you're going out, going into
You wanna hold the
section
sign
now.
up again?
Yeah, I
They-
need,
okay.
yeah, I have looked at that, but if you remember the car thing right here.
VR54.
Old bicycle.
You got anything you want to sell? You got any storage buildings? I mean,
Well, and I don't have anything.
I
good
was on
too.
subject till Leonard here started going somewhere else. But,
Talking about, these fans, you remember D.B. Gamble.
oh, yes.
D.B. was the greatest Pisgah fan that has ever lived. D.B. was injured in the war, World War II. He had one leg, he couldn't speak plain unless he cursed.
Yes, he
You
could
could
say
understand that.
He never missed a practice at Pisgah.
Never.
Every
He
practice
was at
I ever
every
played, he
practice
was on.
we ever had, at every ball game. If he didn't have a way there, we took him on the bus with us. And I remember Coach Cooley telling me one time that they were getting ready to go to Tuscaloosa to the tournament. DB didn't have a way. And he asked Coach Cooley, and Coach Cooley said, "We just don't have room." DB said, "I'll ride in the trunk." So they found DB a way. But DB was the greatest fan that's ever been. And I let him sit on the end of the bench because he loved to be part of it. One night, referee stopped right in front of me. He said, "Get that old guy off the end of the bench. He's cursing me." I said, "What are you going to do?" He said, "I'm going to throw him out." I said, "Listen, see all those people over there?" I said, "You're not going to throw this guy out."
No.
Because they all love him. He said, "Well, try to get him to be quiet." So,
Hey, DB, it is a really sad story. And I want to say it was in the Battle of the Bulge.
I
he
think
got
that's
hurt.
where he laid on the battlefield like 4 days
Yeah,
before
and
they could get to
you know
him.
how he lived was, but he could say certain things. But now when I was in high school, DB Gamble never missed a practice. He could get up on that stage with those steps with his crutch. And I always remembered he only had one leg, but he had a friend who only had the other leg. And then when he'd buy shoes, he'd send a friend his shoe, and that guy would send him a shoe. And
I'm just excited they were the same shoe size. That
yeah,
was-
it was. I mean, that
was
that's
a good thing.
And I don't even know if they were the same. They were proud to get them anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Because he would buy shoes at my brother-in-law's store there in Pisgah. So that's how I came to know that. But DB would sit on, and he loved to see you suffer when you were out there running. And Coach Cooley was a king of wind sprints and turnovers. If you had a bad turnover night, I mean, you spent the rest of the day dreading going to practice because turnovers was not in his vocabulary to allow. But DB, there was a terrible commercial back in the 60s, and it was a cat food commercial. And there was this lady on the back porch, and she'd go out there and try to get her cat to come home, and she'd say, "Tom, come home, Tom." It was just horrible commercial. We had a kid in the 10th grade when I was a senior, was not a dandy player, but his name was Tom, unfortunately for him. And we get to running, and you're down there toward those last 4 or 5 sprints where you really don't know if you're going to live or not. And Tom was kind of like me. He was not in great condition in the world. But DB would come in. Now you're out of breath. You can't breathe. You've practiced for 2 hours and a half. And DB would start saying, "Tom," he could say that, "home," and we would just, you just want to die laughing. But he was, I mean, that's what we're talking about, these kids. And I know, and I've talked to y'all about Coach Dabo and Coach Saban that day, and Coach Dabo Sweeney saying to his kids, if we win the national championship, don't let this be the greatest thing you've ever done in your life. Although it should not be the greatest thing. It is, if you can win that, or if you can go to the state, if you win at JSU next week, if you go down there, that's something they can never take away from you.
Yeah.
I've got buddies that played on state championship games that life just hadn't turned out as well. They've suffered situations that's horrible, but when I see them, and I'll ask them maybe about the situation that they've had to deal with, eventually they're going to start talking about, "Do you remember when we played Alexandria?" And I thought, well, sure, I remember.
Yeah. So that's those girls that I had. All of them had good parents. All of them, were supported at home. And I like to think they learned something in basketball. And every one of them has gone on to be very successful in life now. And there's not one of them is a doctor with the CDC, and she told me the other day that she's working on this new virus from the mosquitoes. Now, who would ever thought a girl from Rosalie, Alabama, would be trying to cure this disease? You know, so they've gone on and been very successful. Some of them teachers, nurses, you know, different things. And I think that the athletic part of it had something to do with it. Not all, but had something to do with that.
Well, Coach Cassidy and I have talked about kids, and particularly growing up at Pisgah. Dr. Ted Traylor, the pastor at Pensacola Baptist Church, I was listening to him one night, and he said that he'd run into somebody, and they said, "Oh, I've been through Pisgah," and Ted said, "Well, you lying?" He said, "You don't go through Pisgah, you go to Pisgah, because Pisgah's a loop, you know, you have to be going to, you don't just pass through it." And Coach Cassidy and I were talking about this. In the 50s and 60s, you could go out and eat. You didn't have any money.
Yeah.
Basketball practice was completed when you left school by 2:30. Now, how all these people back in the 50s and 60s, one of my friends that played on our team as all the way up, you know, he's a chemical engineer. Companies fight for him. He's no telling how much money or how many successful things. Somehow, he's the same amount of intelligent getting off at 2:25 every day from basketball practice. He went to 4 classes and 2 hours of basketball practice, and he's still a genius. And but now we've got we came out with the Department of Education when we were in school. We talked about the last time here when Coach Cash and I talked about playing a game at school every year. And when I started coaching, Coach Cooley told me, said, "You can never do anything better," and that's what I started doing it immediately at Pisgah for your program, than to get a day game where all your little kids can come see it. Because that sticks in their mind, and that did mine. That's what got me involved in basketball in the first grade. I fell in love with it. Well, Dr. T came out this excellence in education. Of all the things that was in that book, they did none of them. It was absolutely worthless, and this is where we go, don't get me into politics. But this is absolute, but the one thing they stopped, you couldn't play a junior high district tournaments and state tournaments. Well, congratulations. Let's just let them kids hang out at the corner. And thank you, Dr. T. You're a knucklehead. And then you couldn't play a day game. Well, finally, people the last few years have started back ignoring that.
Yeah.
It was just a stupid law of some politician. And you have to have, the one thing that bothers me, and I don't know the answer to it, but I remember Senator Barron was really concerned with this 30 years ago, is the Alabama High School Athletic Association is an independent agency. They're not under the Department of Education. They literally operate independently, and they have a lot of power. And Senator Barron considered putting them under the state, and they kind of, I don't know, I can't remember why they wound up not doing it, but I know that is now being considered again, and you know, it's difficult. It's like, I don't know if y'all saw it or not, but NFL, for instance, is they're going to quit being because they've got so much criticism, but they've been a tax-free commodity business, and they've been paying the commissioner $45 million a year. Well, I don't think you deserve $45 million a year to do that.
I'd like to have that job.
Well, I'd like
Where
to
do we
have it for a
apply? I'll
day.
apply for it.
You know, he makes more in a day than I'm going to make the rest of my life, probably. But there's some things like that. I think we get away from it. Things become such a business. When I was helping Coach Doss at Butler, and now he is at Johnson and will be at Jemison next year. When I was at Butler, we didn't have good crowds until the tournaments because our kids didn't have $6 to get in the gate. I can remember when I first started coaching. Of course, I loved Coach Householder, and we had coaches that once a year had to meet with the principals, and the principals had gone up on the getting in a ball game. And you remember how much it was to get in a ball game? I think it was a quarter
Yeah, it was.
when I was a kid. But then, it went to $1 and stuff. But they were going up like 50 cents per ticket to football games. And Coach Househalter said, no. Said, you're not going to do that. And the principal said, yeah, we are. He said, I can tell you. He said, you go ahead and do it. He said, but I'm going to cut so many holes in that fence at 5. Every kid I got can't afford to get in front is going to get in that stadium somehow. And I bet you that's what he did because it was about the kids. And I remember when we started the Civic Center, it's too easy to remember when you couldn't buy a Coke. And my board was really, really good to us. And I told them, I can't remember. I think I always had a dime Coke for like 15 years. There was never a kid who was going to come in the basketball game that wasn't going to be able to. And about once a year, you let all the kids in free, give them some popcorn and Coke. Well, they're basketball fans for life. Mm-hmm. We get away from that sometimes when we've got to do a multi-million.
When we would play in the daytime, we'd lose money.
Yeah.
Because let kids in for a quarter. If they didn't have a quarter, let them in.
Oh, yeah. Wouldn't you? Nobody was going to miss.
But, like you said, they became fans. And you probably got some players out of that eventually.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's what we're looking at our kids now. Our basketball teams on Sand Mountain are better, y'all. Mm-hmm. And Coach Cassidy and I'd like to deny that and say how great we were. But one of my all-state players almost made me late. Stopped by the house a while ago, and I told him I had to go. But I told him, I said, he lives in Tuscaloosa. I said, but you got to come watch Plainview play. He was the best shooter on our team, so it took us about 15 minutes to get him open. I said, Plainview has got 7 shooters like you. And I said, when we're open, we shoot it. And I said, he said, I'll be there. He said, I'll take off. And this is fun.
That must have been Chris.
It was Chris Bowden. Yeah.
I could tell some great stories about
We
you
could.
and Chris, but we
Yeah.
can't do it on now.
What? Well,
PG.
no.
PG rated.
What he is talking about, Coach Cassidy and I were actually young once. I don't care to tell it. And we had gone over to Chris's mom and dad had a lake house, and we went over to, I think we went over to fish.
Yeah.
And at the night, there were several of us over there, and I come up, and Chris Bowman had rather have pillow fights than anybody. He could start more stuff than anybody I've ever seen. And when we were at state tournament about to play one time, I heard the worst ruckus in the room next door. Well, I realized what it was. They had broke into a 10-man pillow fight. Except Chris, he cheated. He would put a shoe in the pillowcase. Well, he hits Keith Williams, Coach Keith Williams, who never let you speak in class, in the mouth. Well, Keith was about the 6th or 7th man. I started putting him in. I knew what had happened because, there's always informants. I just didn't have time to kill somebody during the state tournament.
You weren't going to kick Chris off.
I was not. He was on the score I had. And Keith's lip is swollen up. And I started putting him in. And here's my deacon. This is my deacon. I'm putting him in. I said, what happened to your lip? He said, must have got hit warm-ups. He had this big knot of it. And, but we were over there fishing during the summer. And I was walking up some steps, and Chris hit me right in the face with a pillow that had a shoe in it. And it broke into the world's worst wrestling match that has ever. We tore the curtains off the wall. And Butch told me, he said, your team is crazy. I said, I know, but a wrestling match. I was young once. I know, Logan.
Bill Ayers and I were sitting there watching this, and Bill said, you going to stop it? I said, I'm not going to get involved in that.
I'll tell you a story. I had, it was some Icy Hot, and it was roll-on, and it looked like a stick of deodorant.
Oh, gosh.
Well, I used to put it on my legs, and I thought, man, this would just be so painful if I could convince someone to put it on like deodorant. And I thought, well, nobody's going to do it. So
yeah, there's one in every.
I peeled the Icy Hot sticker off, and I had an Old Spice deodorant stick. Well, I took the Old Spice off the Old Spice and put it on the Icy Hot, and I was like, now how am I going to get somebody to do this? I looked at my buddy Dylan Clark, and I was like, go in there and
ex-buddy.
yeah. I was like, go in there and tell Jake Slay his armpits stink. And he's like, what? And I was like, just go do it. Tell him he needs to put deodorant on. So he goes out there, and Jake Slade, who's on this Plainview team we keep talking about, comes in. I was like, why you come back in? We're about to start practice. And he said, man, Dylan said my underarms stink. I got to put some deodorant on. I said, well, here, I got mine out. And I threw it to him. And he put it on or whatever, and he walked back out. I bet you it wasn't 30 seconds. He come running back in with both his arms held straight up, and he was just red as he could be. And he said, what kind of deodorant is that? Of course, me and Dylan are in the floor laughing. And he's in the sink just splashing water.
That's Logan at Mountain Valley News. It's not Terry or Butch.
About the time Coker comes in, he's, what are y'all doing? We're about to start practice. And I couldn't even look at him. And Jake said, he's got some kind of devil deodorant he gave me. Yeah, I had to run for that one.
You know, yeah, well, you deserve to. Coach, we were talking about talking about teams that made it to the state tournament. If you look, Geraldine won a lot of state championships back in the 30s, and I think I told this story the last time about one of my preachers as a child. He said he could make more money if you go to a school and play basketball. They give you room and board. You go to that school. And Brother Johnny Johnson went to Geraldine and played for Coach Guy O'Brien, who won 2 state championships at Geraldine and won 2 at Scottsboro. Well, after they won the state championships at Geraldine, Coach Johnny Johnson went and played for Coach O'Brien's brother down in South Alabama. That's the reason you have to have an athletic association, so you can. It's like I've got one of my players' son has played on the 3rd grade team for 4 years. He started playing, and now they have to take a birth certificate with him, because everybody strikes him about here. That's important to have regulation. It's also important, generally speaking, as far as the rules are concerned in sports, in high school sports, your principal is the one that enforces them. Yeah. If it gets past the principal, if he doesn't stop it, then you're trouble, and that's good. But I remember Coach, I worked for Coach, when I was in college. During the summer, I would be an aide to Coach Strickland. So, and my brother ran a service station there in Section, and Coach Strickland was kind of a private person. Really, really good coach. I see the things now that are being done that he did years ago. At one time, Jackson County had Coach Strickland, Coach Cooley, and Coach Carter were probably the 3 best coaches in the state. And I remember
Coach Strickland, let's play hard, boys.
Let's play hard. And one Z.C. Sparks, who made All-State and played for him, told me that the playing for Coach Strickland, the thing was it was so positive. He said if you're behind, he would always tell them at half, he said, they're not too far for us to catch them. And he said if we was ahead, he said we're too far from to catch us. And it was a really positive concept. That wasn't necessarily, all coaches didn't do that. And but I mean, the '69 team at Section was Coach Strickland used to say his center was 6'1". He was about 6'4". But then he literally had 4 really small guys, and they could press so well. And of course,
what was that kid, Pruitt?
Yeah, Merle Pruitt scored 50-something points in the finals, which and that record stood for years, except I think Billy Alexander had held the record with like 52, and then Merle in '69 changed it, and it stood for years and years and years, and that was, and I remember they had a span there, like Coach Cooley. I think he went to the state in '59, '60. I know they got beat. They only lost 2 games, but in '62, I don't know what happened in '61. But then when they went to 4 classifications, Coach Cooley's team won the first 4 classifications. John Dearman, Don Burkhalter, Wallace Tinker, whose grandson plays on the Plainview team now, who is still the best high school basketball player I've ever watched. Mm-hmm. He could play in any generation. Some of them don't go over.
Wallace had the athletic ability that he could play now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I played with Wallace one time when I was at Pisgah, at low independent thing. We were all in our 30s. He still played like he's 18 years old.
Yeah, he's absolutely most amazing guys. His brother coached in Georgia and won 500 or 600 games. And I talked to him a few years ago, and he told me how many kids he had that got scholarships. Billy was the only, he finished his eligibility and had not got his degree, and he played for, it'll take me a while, the Auburn Shuffle, the man that created the shuffle. He played for him, and that coach at Auburn, golly, boy's getting old, it's bad. But the coach at Auburn, Billy was the only one that had never graduated that played for him. And he went and got Billy, and Billy had quit his job he'd found and come back to Auburn and finish that last semester. And he did. And then he spent, 30-something years coaching basketball over in Georgia. And those kids, being a winning basketball team, I've seen, and we've all seen just horribly tragic stories from kids who were very successful athletically and then just led tragic lives, and we can all pull them up. And this is not a guarantee on them. I'm still like Coach Cassidy. The guarantee, as Jerry Clower says, you got a good mom and daddy.
Yeah.
And now I'm gonna tell you something. If you mamas and daddies out there, coaches are gonna play the 5 best ones. I don't care. A Presbyterian coach would play a Muslim at post if he was the best one out there. And that's the way it is. That's what that's lined up to be.
It's just hard for people not to see their kid as the best.
No, I told them.
And I can see that with my grandkids.
Yeah.
I think they're the best. They
Well,
probably aren't.
I told them, my daughter grew up, played a lot as a 10th, 11th grader, and we got a new coach when he was a senior, so he started playing younger kids, and she didn't play as much. And I told a meeting one time, I saw that in action. That's the best player I've ever seen at Plainview. You didn't get to play much as a senior. And they said, who is it? I said, it's my daughter. I know she's the best one I ever seen. And that's you should look at it like that. But you should also let your child fight that battle.
Yeah.
And they'll be successful. Other night, I got to see a kid, for me, great baseball player, was not a great basketball player, but he was there every day. And I don't know how much he got to play some. He told me he had 3 boys. All 3 of those boys, his mom and daddy supported him and his brothers all the way through. All 3 of his boys were granted scholarship at Service Academy. Every service academy gave all 3 of his boys, and one of them's a senior at West Point now playing football and baseball. Now, I'm going to tell you something. By the time you're Coach Cassidy and I's age, owning a home on the lake or well, I do like the cars, let's face it. But these things become more important to you, and seeing and getting to talk to him. And we finally got in a position where we could talk and see Plainview play at the same time. But that's success. And every one of my teams mourned for kids that didn't come out just as we wanted it to. And I told them the other night one of the kids playing now at Plainview, his dad played on the team but didn't win but 5 games. But we would get beat 5 points, I reckon, every night, and people would actually come out the stands and hug their necks. Because that's as much as they could do, and that's what we're looking for.
I'll tell you, some of the best coaching jobs I did was losing teams.
Yeah.
I mean, coaches work just as hard if they're winning or they're losing. It's just one of those things, and most of the time you work harder if you're losing because you're trying so hard, especially the kids are working hard. Mm-hmm. And I've had teams like you talking about that just fight their rear ends off every night and still get beat,
I had a friend was actually looking for a possibility of a job, and asked me, and I know it, and well, come to find out it was one of Coach Cassidy's players who I knew, and I won't use, at this time I really won't use the name. And Coach Cassidy and I got to talking about him. He was a terrible basketball player, good rebounder, and because he just knocked everybody down. at least 5 times and get the ball. And we got to thinking, we think he might not have scored till right before Christmas.
Yeah.
You know, he was like the worst shooter that ever lived. But now he is a great administrator. He's went into a school that really needed some help and has done a great job. So that, you don't get paid much for coaching except for your own, you know, college coaches. Now, I remember when I heard Coach Bill Battle talk about the other day when he got the job at Tennessee, head football coach, got paid $18,000 a year.
Yeah.
That was not all that long ago. And now, you know, it's $5 million. Man, I wish they'd hire me and fire me. I mean, you know, but there's a lot better things. Some of the teams I thought about around here, I remember being in college as a senior and Coach Graham, Sylvania team, playing at Tuscaloosa. And I remember taking off class, and there was enough of us going to Florence State, which is now UNA, to drive down to watch Ray and Terrell and that bunch play.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're about out of time. If you want to show your picture you were going to show, not the cars.
Not that one?
We got
That's
that
right.
one. We got that, Coach. We got that.
Yeah, this is Coach Paul Cooley and 1959 state championship. Can you get that? We're not real professionals about live.
I like that we zoom into this, but we will not zoom into your used car poster.
We didn't zoom into that.
I don't think we did.
Hold
Are you gonna put that? You're gonna put that in front of the picture?
Coach Cooley would be mad at me if I didn't do this.
Yeah.
Old car. And listen, I have been looking for a 1961 Murray
Mulch on the
Comet
camera over.
bicycle. And there's one out there somewhere in this nation.
I
tell you,
can't deal.
If
I
we
can't
do
deal.
another one of these shows, I'm going to sell some advertising to somebody.
There is a buy, sell, or trade network on Facebook if y'all aren't familiar with that.
Listen,
But
remember Plainview plays at 10:30 Saturday morning against Piedmont. Piedmont has 5 starters remaining. The Graham family who moved out of our community, whose son Luke plays now at Westbrook Christian. They play New Hope, which when I was in 7th grade, I was a New Hope fan. This is the best basketball team New Hope has had probably in 50 years. So that's the bracket there. Collinsville plays, okay, look, Coach, that's what you were supposed to do, was look at Collinsville.
Well, I didn't have a chance to.
There's a lot of pressure in this job. Collinsville plays Friday at 4:30. And they play against Cleveland. I don't know much about either one of those. Section plays in the opposite bracket against Vincent at 7:30. So
definitely come out and support all the teams from around here. I know everybody would love to have your support, as we'd love to see you there. Feel free to talk to any of us, especially if you have a car for sale. I've had
do
fun.
not talk to Becky. If she answers the phone, just hang it up.
I've had fun doing this. I know these guys have too. And from Mountain Valley, we just thank you for tuning in each week.